Have you ever heard of Haughville, Indiana, or more specifically that a community located just a little west of the White River here in Indianapolis known as Haughville once existed? Well, it's true. Welcome to Hoosier History. I'm Rick Maltra. Today we're going to take a look at a little-known aspect of our Hoosier heritage. Haughville was established here in 1883, and while nearly 100 years have passed since then, there is little physical evidence today that would demonstrate a once thriving ethnic community once existed here, with one exception, and that is the Rock of Gibraltar of Haughville, which is the Holy Trinity Catholic Church, which I am standing in now. What makes Haughville so interesting are the people who once lived here, their character, their dreams, their ideals, and expectations of a new America.
Benjamin Haugh, for which Haughville gets its name, moved his iron foundry from the center of Indianapolis to west of White River in 1880. Originally located on Delaware Street near Washington Street, Haugh chose a site along the railroad tracks on the south side of Michigan Street, just west of Germania Avenue, which is now known as Bellevue Place. In 1881, Haugh formed a partnership with John Ketchum, and their company specialized in ornamental ironwork. They manufactured the ironwork installed in the Marion County Courthouse and the Indiana State House. Ironworkers settled in the generally low and swampy ground around the area foundries, which also included Malibu Castings Company and the Leak Belt Company. In 1883, the town of Haughville was incorporated. It covered 640 acres and extended from Belmont Avenue on the east to Tibbs Avenue on the west, 10th Street on the north, and to Washington Street on the south. It was on March 15, 1897, that Haughville, with its 2,500 inhabitants, was annexed to Indianapolis. Slovenians became the largest Eastern European immigrant group in Indianapolis. They were described as people who worked hard and people who played hard. James DeVita, professor of history at Marion College in Indianapolis, shares his thoughts on the character of the people of Haughville.
Hard-working, big drinkers, people who loved a good time, appreciated family, and had all those home values that immigrants are noted for. Hard-working because so many of them worked in the foundries. Big drinkers because of the kind of thirst that would be yours after being in a situation where 140 degrees was not uncommon. Among women who were at home and did not work in the foundries, they worked long hours, not only keeping their husbands fed and clothed, but also their children. And it was not uncommon to have half a dozen or more boarders, young men from the old country who were trying to get a start, and Malibu was willing to give them jobs, in fact apparently recruited in the old country to get workers to come, recognizing the abilities of Slovenes in this kind of work, that these women then worked long hours and worked as hard, I think, as their husbands and brothers and fathers did in the foundries. So my overall impression, after having interviewed older people from that area, and the general reputation of Slovenes along the lines that I'm suggesting here.
The number of Slovenes in Haughville was sufficient to permit the organization of clubs, which provided insurance benefits and sponsored many social activities and sporting events. The first was St. Aloysius Lodge, number 52, organized on May 6, 1900, and affiliated with the Carnolian Slovene Catholic Union. Another club was St. Joseph Lodge, number 45, affiliated with the Yugoslav Catholic Union. A third was St. Cyril and Methodius Lodge, unaffiliated with any national organization. Holy Trinity pastors always encouraged membership into a Catholic organization. In addition, the Slovenian National Home at 729 North Holmes Avenue was organized in 1918. Along with the Catholic clubs, these organizations provided the residents of Haughville the means for taking up their favorite recreation, whether it be card playing, league club activities, or the like. The most popular pastime for Slovenians, however, seemed to be dancing.
It wasn't the time to really go around like they do now. They had their own social run here, you know. National Home was the biggest place where people went.
What happened at the National Home? What was that all about?
Dancing.
Dancing?
Dancing on Saturday night.
Was that the big thing to do back in Haughville?
That was about the biggest thing around here that I know of. You know, maybe it was some before, but I don't know. But since 1930, then we had a show here on 10th Street. And that's all I could remember. We had stores on Michigan Street. We had dime store, we had Goodman's, we had different stores that we didn't even have to go down if we didn't want to. Mm-hmm. But sometimes we used to ride a trolley. We used to go downtown. And when Gloria got married, I used to take kids down there in Dolores. I had 3 kids, 2 girls and 1 boy. And we used to go downtown just about every Saturday. Just to look around and see what's going on around the dime store, just nose around, I guess.
Among the dime stores of Haughville, there were other businesses as well. Joseph Zunick and his family ran a grocery that was located at 777 North Haw Street. And in the back of that store, if you take a close look, is where the undertaker was located. Joseph Rosner ran a dry goods and grocery store at the corner of 10th and King. His 3 sons went on to become druggists. Slovene's Joseph Koren operated a dry goods store, and Anton Urbancic was in hardware. Joseph Gajnik was the best-known saloon keeper and businessman among Holy Trinity parishioners. Speaking of saloons, some 24 existed in Haughville. They were built in 2-story homes on almost every corner. Because of the heat surrounding their jobs, Slovenes were noted for drinking beer to quench their almost overwhelming thirsts. Probably the most colorful of the Haughville saloons was the one located on Holmes, diagonally across the street from Malibu Castings Company. Frank Luzar reminisced and said it was nicknamed the Bucket of Blood, for one good reason, he recalled. There were so many fights there, especially on Friday nights, they could have sold tickets. No knives or guns, though. Just an occasional pool cue or 2x4. It was quite a place. Besides drinking, card playing, dancing, and attending movies, Slovenes patronized the Haughville Library. Children from Holy Trinity School and nearby School 52 regularly used the collection. Many people came to the branch, especially when it began to receive foreign language material. In 1925, the branch subscribed to 22 foreign language newspapers and circulated books in 10 different languages. In the years 1926 through 29, the number of books borrowed annually at the Haughville branch exceeded the number borrowed at any other branch in Indianapolis. James DeVita, professor of history at Marian College, comments on Haughville's lack of notoriety.
Haughville, I think, is one of those neighborhoods in Indianapolis that outside of those who live there or whose ancestors lived there, very little is known. The major publication on Haughville would be a study which I did in order to commemorate the 75th anniversary of one of the 2 Catholic parishes in Haughville, one that was established in 1906 for the Slovenian immigrants who came into Indianapolis and who settled in that particular area. And their parish was called Holy Trinity. That parish then is a symbol of an immigrant presence on the west side of Indianapolis. For not only did Holy Trinity have Slovene parishioners, but there were also Polish and Hungarian immigrants who were members of that parish. Haughville itself goes back over 100 years, named for a man who established a foundry off of Michigan Street, between Michigan Street and the railroad tracks to the south. And it was something of an industrial suburb of Indianapolis until 1897, when the city of Indianapolis annexed it, and West Indianapolis and some other towns that had developed on the outskirts of Indianapolis adjacent to its boundaries. But most people, I think, in Indianapolis are oriented to what I would call the Meridian Street Strip. In other words, you know, something of downtown and through 38th Street and up the northern part of the county. And neighborhoods like Irvington, maybe they have some information, at least heard the name. But other areas like Brightwood, West Indianapolis, are probably no more known or less known than Haughville is. And that I think that from the point of view of understanding the history as well as development of a major city such as Indianapolis, that there should be a good hard look at Haughville, because I think that it's an interesting area and has an interesting background.
Certainly not to be excluded from the interesting background that Haughville has would be the customs that the community shared. Especially striking were marriage customs. The day began with the actual wedding mass. Then, an accordionist would accompany the wedding party from house to house, inviting family and friends to the festivities that night. Conversation, dancing, and much food and drink were in evidence. Among the food items served was patika, a traditional Slovene bread. Everyone would participate in the pillow dance, a special polka for weddings. At midnight, the bride and groom, seated with their parents beside them, were serenaded with Slovene melodies and toasted to years of happiness. Then, at that most solemn moment, the bride's veil would be removed, signifying that her carefree girlhood days had ended, and that she was now to shoulder family responsibilities. Funerals were also a major community event. If the deceased were a lodge member, 2 lodge representatives wearing black badges maintained a vigil while the corpse rested at home. At the funeral service, an officer and 6 pallbearers officially represented the lodge. If the deceased was a member of 2 lodges, then an officer and 3 pallbearers from each lodge appeared. The lodge paid $1 to each of its official representatives. All members were encouraged to attend the service and to accompany the casket to its burial place. This practice continued until the Malabo management complained that too many work hours were being lost from employees attending funerals. This was especially true in 1918, when the Spanish flu hit Haughville. 20 Holy Trinity parishioners died within 3 months from the epidemic. At the end of a funeral mass, the casket was propped up before the church and opened. A formal photograph of the deceased, lodge members, and their banner was taken. A 5- or 6-piece band accompanied the processional group as far east as the Michigan Street Bridge over White River on its way to the cemetery.
Fraternal organizations' members took their responsibilities very seriously, and it was they who really conducted your funeral. And they took that responsibility and the work and the heartache that funeral arrangements would normally give a family away from the family, so the family at least wouldn't have that particular aspect to worry about. Church service was a community affair, and the old practice of opening the coffin on the steps of the church so that a formal portrait could be taken of the family, the members of the society, as well as the deceased, as a last get-together, if you will, last sign of their community before the band played and the march to the cemetery began. So for Slovenes, as well as for other immigrants, these particular events, important events in anyone's lifetime, birth, marriage, death, were very significant and were marked by these particular customs. Now, one reason for the funeral rituals ceasing to exist, beginning in the 1920s, is that employers didn't like them. The Malibu management in particular was very concerned about if one of the workers died, half the plant wouldn't show up for the day because they were members of society and therefore went about their business fulfilling their responsibilities as society members. But the notion here would be that those with a peculiar language living in their own neighborhood, as they really attempted to create the village of the old country in Haughville, that they hung together or they hung separately. And therefore, it was logical for them to form these societies as well as to continue those rituals which would show community spirit.
I had heard that members of the same fraternal organization as the deceased, if they did not show up for that person's funeral, they were fined.
They were fined.
That's true.
Right. That is right. That is right.
By our standards today, the police and fire departments of Haughville were primitive in means of transportation, with only bicycles and horses to get them around in the early 1900s. Fire Station Number 9 was built in 1898 for around $5,000 and originally opened for business as Hose Company Number 20. It was manned by 4 firefighters, and 2 horses drew the 4-wheeled hose wagon around Haughville. The fire station was closed in December of 1981. It was the oldest fire station still in service, and one of the oldest still standing in Indianapolis.
Today, Fire Station Number 9 is all boarded up, and there's been some speculation as to its fate in the future, whether it will be torn down or turned into a museum by the Indianapolis fire buffs who would like to display antique fire trucks and equipment here. This old fire station is one of the few remnants left of old Haughville, and it is a reminder of the Slovenians who left Eastern Europe to settle what is now part of Indianapolis. Why did they leave the old country, and what brought them to America?
Well, I'm really like it over here. You know, I'm glad how bad there was old country after the First World War. There was real everything, you know, almost nobody come back. That young man, they get killed or they was wounded bad and stuff like that. That's why there are lots of people, they come over here from there. They thought they couldn't live there anymore, you know, that was real bad.
His parents was here. They was here 10 years before he come over here. His father was here about 14 years before he come over here. Him and his sister, they was born over there, and then the father come first, and then the mother come, and the kids over there were grandma and grandpa. And then they was over there 10 years before they come in this country. Because they was poor, they had boarders, and she couldn't take care of them, and she had other kids here.
Looking for the opportunities of America?
I guess.
I'm real glad that I come to the United States, you know, anyway. That Second World War people was real poor over there, you know, they destroy almost everything. Yeah. When I was here, First World War, they just young men in boys suffer the most. You know, they have to go to war, but we don't have nothing to. We don't get no sugar, no soap, no coal oil, nothing like that. We couldn't get it.
You had hard times here, though, too.
Real hard time. We had to make soap home. You know, the other way we can wash clothes and nothing like that. Yeah, that really was bad. Yeah, but I'm really happy. I really, God bless America. I really like it.
Athletics were very important to the Haughville community. It was in 1961 that former Marion County Sheriff Robert O'Neill, a native of the area, recalled that Haughville was a nice little community, not poor or rich. There were a lot of good, solid church-going families, but it was a rough and tumble athletic crowd. Kick the wicket, baseball, basketball, and bowling were the favorite sport activities. Hesitantly, the older lodge members agreed to the younger members' demands that lodges sponsor athletic events and leagues. Spending money on games was difficult for the thrifty Slovenes to accept. But In the long run, athletics proved to preserve the lodges. Membership to a lodge is a requisite to play on a lodge team. An illustration of this athletic orientation are the Yugoslavs football team and the hosting of the Slovene Progressive Benefit Society National Athletic Tourney. The West Side Yugoslav 11 were undefeated champions of the Smith-Hassler-Sturm Capital City League in fall of 1936. Frank Pop Hedden coached them. In 5 games, their opponents made no touchdowns. Then, in a postseason game, the Yugoslavs played the Fort Harrison Soldiers before 15,000 fans at the Butler Bowl and defeated them 14-6. Although many clubs and organizations have flourished among the Slovenes, the 2 most important, based on size and age, were St. Aloysius Lodge and the St. Joseph Lodge. St. Aloysius Lodge was a firm supporter of the organization of Holy Trinity Parish. Baseball certainly ranked right up there with football in terms of popularity, and Haughville certainly had its share of winning baseball clubs.
So athletics was a major outlet for Slovenes, and the clubs, the lodges latching on to sports as a way to maintain membership has also preserved then these ethnic organizations, which may well have ceased to exist if it wasn't for that.
Did they play other clubs from around the city, or did they just play within their own fraternal organization?
Play within the city, as well as the fact that these lodges have national affiliations. And even today, teams will come down to play, say, basketball from Joliet or Waukegan or Cleveland or whatnot. And teams from Indianapolis will play in these places too. Bowling leagues, basketball, these kinds of sports for young and not so young, particularly attractive, and it also gives one a chance to do some traveling. And from the ethnic point of view, in light of the fact that some of these other cities would have relatives, both close and distant, who reside there, give you a chance to visit with family because you're there because of some tournament that has been scheduled in that particular city.
Holy Trinity Church, the cornerstone of the community of Haughville, was dedicated in April of 1907. The formation of Holy Trinity Parish for the non-English speaking parishioners of St. Anthony's was not without some tension and hard feelings. Slovenes found it difficult to worship at either St. Anthony's or at St. Bridget's east of the White River. Like the Hungarians and Poles in Haughville, they felt uncomfortable because their knowledge of English was limited, and they were strangers among the Irish majority. Father Joseph Laverick was the first pastor of the new church. It was he who named the church. The male parishioners proposed St. Aloysius as the name of the church, and the women suggested St. Barbara. The new pastor chose Holy Trinity as the name that both men and women could accept. The new Roman-style church was built for a cost of $35,000. The seating capacity was 600. Over the door was carved Holy Trinity, and under the rose window was inscribed Slovene Roman Catholic Church. Holy Trinity was the 13th of 43 parishes organized in Marion County. Only one other national parish, Holy Rosary for the Italians in 1909, would subsequently be organized for European immigrants in Indianapolis. 6 Sisters of Providence from St. Mary of the Woods, Indiana, staffed Holy Trinity School between 1911 and 1915. However, only 3 were assigned at any one time. The sisters did not find Holy Trinity a plush assignment. Holy Trinity School had its share of pranksters and toughies, known then as captains. Recalling the sisters who taught at Holy Trinity in the 1920s, a retired man who admitted to having been classified as one of the toughies said, "They, the sisters that is, were honest and fair, but when they caught you doing something wrong, you flew over 3 desks before you knew they smacked you." From 1906 to 1948, All of Marion County's foreign-speaking Catholics and their families, with the exception of Germans and Italians assigned to their own national parishes, belonged to Holy Trinity. Most of them lived in Haughville. After 1948, no matter what their ethnic origin, Catholics who lived within certain boundaries were to consider Holy Trinity their spiritual home. This change upset many parishioners. Territorial status was viewed as an anti-Slovene act.
By 1906, however, Slovenes had enough differences with the Irish-American pastor of St. Anthony's over everything from use of alcohol to who was contributing or not contributing to the church, that they decided to petition the bishop for their own parish. And ultimately they succeeded in getting Holy Trinity Church, but a half-dozen blocks from St. Anthony's constructed. The Slovene church was just that then until 1948, when the Archbishop of Indianapolis gave to Holy Trinity parish specific boundaries, and that all those who live within those boundaries were to attend Mass in that particular church. So there would still be Slovenes, members of Holy Trinity, but there also would be a large number of non-Slovenes who would have attended there.
You're Slovenian, right?
I'm Slovenian, yes, sir.
Do you still speak it?
Yeah, real good.
Speak some for me.
Ja, kako se kaj imaš? Ja, ti si se šulan, ka ne? I say you got good school. Yeah, so the father had to go through the lots of college and all kind of things before he was priest. Yeah, that's right.
That concludes today's program and our look at historic Haughville, part of our Hoosier history. Until next time, I'm Rick Maltra. Thank you for watching.